The message continues to be what it has been, and I appreciate you asking the questions because it is confusing as we take a lot of these steps forward. One is that this is not the time. We want to put in place an immigration process here that is humane, that is moral, but it remains a dangerous trip. It remains a time. This is not the time to come to the United States.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki defending the administration's policies regarding the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, their new proposals raising alarms among some House Republicans who put out a new report warning that, quote, President Biden's immigration policies will rehash the failed policies of the Obama-Biden administration and will only make Americans less safe. These radical ideas will not only affect border communities, but they will also lead to the release of dangerous criminal aliens into neighborhoods around the country, end quote. Congressman Tom McClintock helped co-author that report, and he joins us now live on the program. Congressman, thanks for being with us this morning.
Well, thanks for having me.
You got it. Well, you lay out a very stark picture about this idea of returning to Obama-era immigration policies. What's your greatest concern about the current Biden administration's policies when it comes to immigration?
Well, it's already created a new border crisis on our southern border. Customs and Border Protection agents report that the daily flow on the southern border is nearly doubled from 2,000 last month to 3,500 this month. That's a daily flow. The number of illegals that have encountered on the southern border during the first 4 months of last year was about 165,000 last fiscal year. That number is nearly doubled to nearly 300,000. So President Biden has already created a major border crisis. President Trump had been very successful in getting control of our border. That's, I think, one of the principal reasons why we saw the income gap actually narrow until we took a wrecking ball to the economy last year. It was a blue-collar boom because wages were going up. They're growing at the fastest rate in 40 years, especially for blue-collar workers, because he had stemmed the flow of illegal labor entering this country.
Well, you also, and then of course the pandemic hit, and we've seen the economy struggle because of it. But you mentioned initially in that report these safety concerns as well surrounding immigration. And here's Jen Psaki sort of talking about policies regarding those suspected of serious crimes coming into the country. Watch this.
Priority for the enforcement of immigration laws will be on those who are posing a national security threat, of course, a public safety threat, and on recent arrivals. Nobody is saying that DUIs or assault are acceptable behavior, and those arrested for such activity should be tried and sentenced as appropriate by local law enforcement.
What do you think this approach could mean for American safety?
Well, first of all, she's not being the least bit accurate. They are deprioritizing offenses like drunk driving, sex offenses, property-related crimes like burglary, and they're ordering ICE not to enforce immigration law for 100 days. Thank God that order was stayed by a federal court. But they are essentially introducing to the country the disastrous sanctuary policies that California has imposed and that are causing a dramatic increase in crime.
Well, instead of potentially worrying about what you're warning could happen at the border here, President Biden focusing on potentially imposing some travel restrictions on the people of Florida, okay, within the United States, referencing coronavirus variant concerns. But, Congressman, when it comes to his coronavirus response, what do you really think should be the priority focus right now?
Reopen the country, for God's sake. These lockdowns have had a devastating impact on people, and they have not slowed the spread of the virus. They're not only failing to save lives, they are costing lives through increased suicides, drug and alcohol-related deaths, domestic homicides, deferred health treatments, delayed health screenings, general poverty-related deaths. The National Bureau of Economic Research is predicting 900,000 additional American deaths over the next 15 years because of the increase in poverty that these lockdowns have produced. The Wall Street Journal last month cited 192,000 excess deaths last year in the United States. Now, those are deaths that cannot be attributed to COVID-19 or your normal mortality expectations. 192,000. That is the butcher's bill for these lockdown orders, and Biden is advocating more of them, not less.
So you've made it very clear you want to reopen the country, and I know being in the state of California, your governor has taken more of a shutdown approach. In fact, there's been an effort to recall the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Do you see this picking up steam? Do you think this could be successful, this recall effort?
I sure hope so. I think the recall is going to qualify. I mean, has harmed so many Californians, destroyed their businesses, destroyed their livelihoods, robbed their children of an entire year of their educations. I mean, can you imagine a more anti-school policy than closing down the schools? That's what this man has done, and he bears full and total responsibility for it. You know, his inept departments have squandered between 10 and 30 billions of dollars in fraudulent unemployment insurance claims. Meanwhile, my office gets flooded with calls from legitimate claimants who can't get their unemployment checks made necessary specifically because of the policies that he has imposed on this state. So if there was ever a person more justifiably recalled, it would be Gavin Newsom. Whether he will or not, different matter. You know, when I ran in the recall election in 2003, the Democrats had an 8-point registration advantage. They now have a 22-point advantage. But I think a lot of Democrats are starting to recognize that the policies that the left imposes wherever they seize control destroys their quality of life, and it certainly has here in California. Don't let that happen to the rest of the country, please.
Well, let's talk about an official who has been recalled from his position, President Trump, who's obviously no longer in office, and yet the impeachment trial continues. Some of your colleagues on the other side of the aisle in the House, they just finished presenting their opening argument in President Trump's impeachment trial. They played some emotional videos and obviously are hoping to convince 17 Republican senators to join their efforts to convict Donald Trump on the incitement charge. How do you see this trial playing out?
Well, I think it is, there are a number of issues in here. I mean, the incitement charge is utterly ridiculous. What did the president actually say? He said, I know that some of you are going to march over the Capitol to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. That's not incitement to riot. Exactly the opposite of incitement to riot. And the Democrats don't believe a word of what they're saying, and you know that for a fact, because if they did, instead of pursuing impeachment, they would be pursuing criminal charges against Trump and convicting him. That's a criminal conviction. It requires prison. It would strip him of his right to vote in most jurisdictions and right to run for office. They won't do that because they know that the case would be immediately thrown out of court. And if they presented the testimony that they presented to the Senate, they would very likely be disbarred for unethical conduct. They know that. This is a show.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that. Congressman McClintock joining us live on the program. Congressman, thank you so much.
Thank you.